Welcome to this episode of the Sports Detective Podcast Show. My name is James Williams, and today we discuss if the Miami Heat should consider trading Jimmy Butler. Why are we talking about this? Well, Kendrick Perkins, who you guys know, former NBA center, kind of a guy that people like to laugh at, but he also sometimes says some very crazy things on ESPN airwaves. Some things that are very, I don't know if you'd say controversial. Other times they are very, dumb. I think he's kind of the person that's just like, hey, I have this thought in my brain. I'm just going to say it. I don't think he necessarily does it for clicks. I think sometimes he just likes to, have the discussions out loud. And this is one of those instances here, I think, with him saying that the Miami Heat should trade Jimmy Butler to a contender. So we'll go ahead and play this clip here, and then I'll give you my thoughts afterwards.
There's the two teams, right? They're going in completely opposite directions in the standings. Which one are you more bullish on the Knicks, or are you more worried about the Miami Heat here?
I'm worried about the Miami Heat. And here's one for you right here, Malika. It's time for the Miami Heat and Jimmy Butler to go their separate ways. And I believe that the Miami Heat need to do right by Jimmy and trade him to a team that actually could compete for a title this season. And Jimmy needs to accept that for the simple fact, when you look at their roster right now, right, you have a veteran, old Kevin Love. Jimmy Butler is 34 years of age. Everyone else is 30 years and younger. Bam is 26. Jaquez Jr. is 22. I think Tyler Hero is 24. Like, at the end of the day, this Heat team is not going to have a magical run again. And so we don't know how much we're going to see, how much time we're going to have to see playoff Jimmy.
Right.
And we want to see playoff Jimmy. He's just not going to be, it's just not going to be with the Heat. And so I feel like it's time for them to part ways.
All right, so there you have it there. Kendrick Perkins says the Miami Heat should trade Jimmy Butler. To the point of whether the Heat should trade Jimmy Butler. They should not trade Jimmy Butler. Because I don't know necessarily what you would get for him. And two, they aren't going to trade for him unless he really would hold their feet to the fire and basically do a KD, do a Harden, be like, trade me to these one or two teams because I want to win this year. No, I think Jimmy Butler has been very happy in Miami, and I think he's proven to be a very good, leader and asset for Miami over the last few years. Because Jimmy Butler, when he got traded to Miami or signed there, it was a sign and trade, whatever. He basically said like, "Hey, I want to be the guy, and I want this to be a thing where it's my team." And it wasn't that in Minnesota, and it wasn't that in Philly. And I want to be the guy on a team. And he's proven that, if he's the best player on a team, him in the playoffs with Miami Heat, he can lead them to the finals as he has done 2 times. But as we've seen with how they have had this roster built around him, they have been able to get to the finals. But once they get there, fall short against the Lakers and then fall short against the Nuggets. With that being said, though, as Kendrick Perkins pointed out, he is getting into his mid 30s right now. He's 34, and to the point of like, hey, is it fair to say that like the Miami Heat were the 8 seed last year, and they went on this like magical run to the finals? It's fair to say that they could do it again. First off, I do not think that is fair to say. I think that would be pretty ridiculous to say, because I think they have very much struggled to replace Gabe Vincent and Max Strus. As part of this recent 7-game losing streak that they've been having, which is why everyone's having this discussion. It's because it's mostly because they're just playing very badly on defense, and it is just kind of a little bit of an outlier stretch for them. I'm not saying their losing streak's an outlier and they're gonna go on a 10-game winning streak after this. It is cause for concern, but they definitely shouldn't trade Jimmy Butler because they're on a losing streak in January. I don't think that they can go on another title run this year, but I do think it wouldn't surprise me if they were able to get somebody in a series, depending on how the seeds draw, that they could potentially make it to the second round again. With that being said, though, here's the real reason why they shouldn't trade for Jimmy Butler. Because if you guys remember with how Miami was trying to build their team out this season, they didn't try to re-sign Max Strus. They didn't try to re-sign Gabe Vincent. Why didn't they do that stuff? The Miami Heat were all in on the Damian Lillard sweepstakes. They were giving up Tyler Hero, Nikola Jovic, every first-round pick that they had. There might have been something else in the trade. I can't remember off the top of my head. maybe Duncan Robinson was in it. I can't remember, but they were getting ready to go all in on the Damian Lillard sweepstakes. And the kind of the logic of that was like, well, we've been getting to these finals these last few years. And kind of when we get to these finals, and even a lot of times in these late games in the season, we we believe that like the Miami Heat culture thing and how Spoelstra coaches the team and some of this, around the edges personnel that we have, like Bam and Jimmy, that our defense is always going to be okay. So if we get someone like Damian Lillard, who is a closer, who is a guy that can help us out in the clutch, who can hit outside shots, who can create offense, that will give us a little bit more of a scoring punch, and that can really help us once we get in the finals to have a little bit more of a shot to win a title if we do get there again. With that being said, though, they obviously lose out on the Damian Lillard sweepstakes to to Milwaukee, pardon me. And now they're in the situation where they didn't replace Gabe Vincent or Max Strus. They flipped Kyle Lowry for Terry Rozier, which I think was a good move there. But I don't think that's necessarily something that's moving the needle for them as far as it is this season. But the real reason that they shouldn't trade Jimmy Butler is because even though they swung and missed on Damian Lillard, I know that I'm pretty sure there's going to be at least one all-star level player, all NBA level player that is going to be available this offseason. And that player is Donovan Mitchell. For people that have been mulling around the rumor mill, there's a lot of rumors, a lot of smoke that basically Donovan Mitchell wants to leave Cleveland, that he wants to play in a bigger market, and basically kind of, poking around the grapevines. The big name that we keep hearing is New York. So that's why if you go on ESPN NBA Talk every like 3 weeks, you see a story about like Stephen A being like, I want Donovan Mitchell in New York next to Jalen Brunson. I think that would be a terrible fit. I think it would be a much better fit on Miami, because I think that they kind of would be able to like fit him in at that guard spot. Donovan Mitchell, when he got drafted, guys, too, like, because Donovan Mitchell, he's a very small guard, but he also has like incredibly long arms. So when he got drafted, his draft profile was like, hey, this is a really long, athletic guy. He can be an awesome defender. And maybe in Miami, he could kind of get a little bit of that defense, revitalized, because he hasn't necessarily been playing the best defense over the last few years. That's why Cleveland kind of struggled last year in the playoffs. So I think that would be an excellent fit. But I do think there is an even bigger fish that Miami could potentially get that is in the news right now for other reasons, not necessarily because they're unhappy in their situation, but that person is Joel Embiid. As we know, Jimmy Butler, Joel Embiid have a little bit of playing experience together. When they played together, though, that was like 5 years ago, and Joel Embiid was not this. He was not a 3-time back-to-back, or I guess he's a 2-time now, if depending on the amount of games he plays for the rest of the year. He could potentially be 3-time scoring champion, NBA MVP, and is like this whole top 5 player now. That is a very complete player. So combining that with playoff Jimmy Butler would be a very interesting combo. With that being said, too, you're like, well, why are you throwing Joel Embiid into this discussion here? I do think there is potential with how the Philadelphia 76ers season could go over the next, 3-4 months, that Embiid might just say, screw it. Because right now, he's getting raked through the coals in the news, where people are saying that he's ducking Jokic, that he's scared of Jokic, that he can't get it done in the postseason. And, he wanted the MVP and he wanted to be treated like one of the best players in the world. He's getting treated like that now. People are starting to tear apart your postseason success. People are starting to wonder why your numbers go down in the postseason. People are starting to wonder why you haven't played in Denver since 2019. He's getting very criticized. And if the Sixers, whether they lose to Milwaukee, where they go up against Dame and Giannis in the second round, or whether they lose to, like, let's say the Celtics against Tatum and Tatum, Brown, and Porzingis and the guards in the second round, which that would be like, I think the 3rd or 4th time that Embiid has lost to the Celtics in the playoffs, which, isn't nothing. Where what's to say Embiid is like, hey, you know what? This Philly situation has been crazy the entire time I've been here. I didn't play my first 2 seasons. I start playing. They want to lose games on purpose. You give me this co-star that even when at the best version of Ben Simmons was never exactly a fit next to me. You give me Brett Brown as a head coach who seems like a nice guy, but isn't a playoff winning head coach. And then you trade Ben Simmons and you get me James Harden, who, after a while just like wants to like get out of here and throws a little hissy fit and diarrhea's down his leg every time we get into the playoffs. Like I want out of here. You guys have not been giving me the proper situation, and I want to go to a winning culture. I want to go to the Miami Heat, where I have Jimmy Butler, who is a guy I've seen make it to the finals single-handedly. They have Eric Spoelstra, who's an NBA championship level head coach. I want to go to Miami. Okay, the caveat with that, though, is obviously they would have to give up Bam in that trade. So the fact that because Bam and Joel Embiid obviously play the same position. So you could say, well, wait a second, James, the Miami Heat have less draft assets than the Knicks do. So because when the Knicks did the Anunoby trade, they didn't give up any picks. So the Knicks actually have more draft assets. Because you think of Embiid after a trade, it would be the Knicks and the Heat would be the number 1 and 2 contenders on this list. So you would think that hey, the Knicks have more assets, but I do think maybe a team like the Sixers would maybe value a better player in Bam than anything that the Knicks could potentially give up. So even in a Joel Embiid trade, instead of giving up the Kevin Durant 6 first-round picks, maybe you only have to give up 3 or something in that, and you give up Bam, and then you might have to give up another contract. I haven't necessarily gone through the trade machine machinations of that. But I do think that would be a very, very interesting type of move there. So that's basically why I don't think they should trade Jimmy Butler, because I think, and maybe there's a third or fourth name out there that I can't think of that could potentially be available in the summer. Because again, guys, Miami is a place, if you have Jimmy Butler, if you have Bam, you are going to have players that are want to go play there. You're going to have people that want to go play there under Spoelstra. And there's going to be other stars that are unhappy. Mitchell is definitely one that is an option. But if I'm Miami, I kind of maybe striking out on Damian Lillard was a little bit, it's kind of looking at the glass half full versus half empty. Because even though you struck up on Dame, I do think there could potentially be other stars out there that could be available for the Miami Heat to strike for. And again, too, if you're going to strike this offseason, because again, probably the best point that Perkins made there, Jimmy Butler is getting into his late 30s now, or mid 30s now, where that's where it's the tail end of your prime, where if you wait 2 years to make this deal, it might not work out that way. So it might not work out the same way that you would want if you did it right now. So there you have it, guys. That's why I think the Miami Heat shouldn't trade Jimmy Butler, because I think that they should become buyers in the offseason, basically, to sum up that whole conversation. So if you got this far in the video and you like what you saw, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, really help out us in the algorithm, support the show. Thank you very much for watching. Feel free to explore the Sports Detective podcast show page, find other videos you like. We talk NBA, college basketball, NFL, college football, just kind of talk about interesting stories that we like. So thank you very much for watching. I'll talk to you next time.